and this is really cool. Most modern movies would take a character like that and they would say, he has these expectations and he rejects them and he tries to move away from them. And he doesn't want anything to do with them. But that's not what you see in Hiccup. What you see is, I want to be the guy. I want to live up to this. And I can't, but I'm going to figure out how.
My village. In a word, sturdy. And it's been here for 7 generations, but every single building is new. We have fishing, hunting, and a charming view of the sunsets. The only problems are the pests. You see, most places have mice or mosquitoes. We have dragons.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Watch Well podcast, where we review movies through the lens of truth. Our aim is to be a resource for the church and to help combat the passive consumption of entertainment and pursue a more complete worldview. I'm Parker, your host. This is my co-host, Nick. And as always, we got to get the drum roll. Nick, how was your week?
It was a pretty good week, and I've got this here.
Oh, his week was fine. My week was fine.
So there we go. Yep. Yeah. Pretty good week. I'm excited about this episode. I'm ready to get going here. I'm excited about the guest, and I'm not going to spoil what movie we're talking about because our guest is going to have the opportunity to introduce that. But I just want people to know I think it's going to be a good episode, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I'm super pumped. If you guys get anything out of this episode, please go ahead, like, subscribe, and if you could share it to one person. You know, the algorithms don't really like us Christians, so if you could share it for us and help us beat the algorithm, we would really appreciate it, and it would help us reach more people. And without further ado, I want to introduce Jack. Jack, Reformed Zoomer on X. How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good. How about you, Parker? You doing all right?
I'm doing great, man. I want to thank you for being here and, gracing us with your presence. You are, I've been following you on X for a few months, and I think you do a good job. And we got talking, and you decided to come on. And at that point, I'll just let you introduce the movie, and then I want to know why you picked the movie you picked.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, we met on X. We kind of started talking. I was familiar with your ministry, and it ended up, I think you invited me to come on, talk about a movie, and I spent a couple months unable to decide what to talk about. There's just too many good movies.
There's a lot.
But then it was actually, so I have a little brother, 5 years old, and he started watching these movies and watching them back, now that I'm a little bit older. I was like, wow, there's a lot of really interesting themes in this movie that are like really kind of subtly based, but not in a way that you really pick up. So I was like, yeah, I need to talk about that. I guess going ahead and saying it, the movie's How to Train Your Dragon.
There we go.
So
How to Train Your Dragon. That was a good intro, man. You're a natural. And if you've got any, what do I want to say? Words. It's been a tough week. Slang, like Zoomer slang, you might have to help Nick out on it. You might have to do some defining of terms.
What are you trying to say here? What are you?
What? I say that as a joke because you're probably gonna have to help me too, because I have no idea what the kids are saying these days.
No,
shubidi and whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what our parents thought when we started saying slang words. But you may have to help us. So if we're just staring at you and we don't know what you're saying, translate for us, please, so that we can keep up with you. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try my best. Honestly, I found out most of the slang either from my little sister or from being on X. So
we want you to know about the Dangerous Friends Conference that's happening in White House, Ohio on March 13th and 14th. Presented by Clear Truth Media, come listen to speakers like Michael Foster, Jamie Bambrick, Rosario Butterfield, Steve Deese, and Stephen Whitlow. Focusing on primary doctrine, the Dangerous Friends Conference is rallying friends of all different creeds and confessions within the Protestant box to embrace post-denominationalism. If you're interested in attending or want more information, check out the link in the description and use code WATCHWELL25, that's WATCHWELL25 with both W's capitalized to get $25 off your ticket. Okay, yeah. X is the Wild West, man.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the movie. Jack, if you could just give us an overview of the plot, and then we'll go into, I'm sure Nick has some questions. We'll talk about some of the characters, but just start off with just the basic premise of the movie.
Yeah, sure. So basically, it opens up, and the movie's centered around this kid, Hiccup. He's like 15 years old, and basically he lives on a rock in the middle of nowhere. It's like these are in the like times of Vikings, and kind of the plot of the movie is centered around the whole culture of their little town on an island in the middle of nowhere is that they fight dragons, and the dragons terrorize the town. They try to steal the sheep. They do all this stuff, and they fight them. And that's basically the society that he's growing up in. And you see right from the beginning of the movie, he's really skinny, really weak, and he essentially, like, he wants to be one of the Vikings. He wants to kill the dragons, do all the things that his father expects him to do, and he can't. So he toys with all these inventions. He ends up making one that he uses to shoot down essentially like the worst kind of dragon, the scariest kind that no one's ever been able to kill, and it's called the Night Fury. And he shoots it down, and he goes. He tries to find it. He finds it, and then he takes his knife. He tries to kill it, and he's unable to do so. He can't bring himself to kill it, and that sort of sets into motion this whole plot where he keeps coming back to it. He keeps visiting it, and while this is happening, his father ends up like going off on a ship, bringing a lot of the town with him to try to find essentially the nest where all the dragons are coming from, to try to stop this problem. And Hiccup, while his father's gone, is learning more about dragons. He's moving up in this school like with all of his friends, and he's becoming like the top of his class because he's learning so much about dragons, how they work, how they live, and he ends up being able Toothless when he that's the name of the dragon that he shot down. That's what he named him. But when he shot him down, he injured his tail. He makes a prosthetic so that he can fly. And then, long story short, he learns to fly the dragon, and that ends up being kind of the only way to save the town from the nest that they do eventually find, that his dad finds. And basically, obviously, there's a massive dragon in the nest. It would totally have killed everybody, but he uses the dragon flying to save the day, kill the dragon, and get the girl at the end of the movie. So
there you go.
That's pretty much the synopsis of the film.
Perfect. That was really good. I think you touched on everything. The only thing that I would add that I think might be important would be early on in the film, there's a flashback where we are informed that a prior attack to the town, Hiccup's mother is killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, that is
going
important.
forward. Nick, do you have anything you want to jump in here on?
So not necessarily on the plot of the movie, but I think this is. So I was already in my 20s when this movie when the original How to Train Your Dragon came out. So it wasn't really, obviously because of my age, it wasn't targeted at me. So I actually didn't see it for several years, but I do think that this is, for as popular as I think the whole series has been, and even with a TV show on Netflix and all of that stuff, it seems to be somewhat forgotten in like when talking about animated movies and family movies. And I think that's kind of unwarranted. It is very well done. It's a very good movie, and there's tons of themes that you can use for discussion and to talk about things and talk about life with, and obviously from there you jump off into whenever you're talking about life, you can bring in scripture and what is true and things like that. I think there is a lot there, and there's a lot to relate to for not only kids but adults too in this film. So it's just really good, very well done. I'm happy that you picked it because I do think it's a really good movie that's been forgotten a little bit from, especially compared to how popular it was at the time that it came out, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
I can't remember exactly how old I was when it came out. I think I want to say I was 5 when the movie came out. Maybe even a little bit younger, but I don't know. I can't really remember a time where like I didn't know what the movie was, know what it was about. But yeah, I know you mentioned so I wanted to focus on like kind of the first movie, but that is one thing that I would say about How to Train Your Dragon. I can't think of any other movie or movie series that functions like this, but the sequels are just as good as the first movie. The series, I would say, is just as good as just as good as the all the movies in the trilogy. Like, it's just really well done kind of all the way through, which is really enjoyable because usually you get like sequels are either like a huge letdown or a series is just a way to make a quick buck. But it's actually like really, really well done all the way through with a lot of character development.
Yeah, it would be interesting to sit down with you maybe another time and talk about the third movie, because that was my least favorite. I think everything you just said, I would agree with the sequel. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the third, why you think the third movie follows, that it's as good or equally good as the first. Let's talk about the characters. Let's jump into the characters. What is your overarching thoughts on Hiccup? We'll start with Hiccup and then we'll do Stoick.
So I think Hiccup is a really cool character because you can really like you get what he's going through. And I would say almost especially like young guys today, because Hiccup's dilemma is his father expects a lot of him, and what his father Stoick expects from him, Hiccup, is something that kind of came really easily to him. When he was growing up, he was always the big guy. He was always a dragon killer. And I almost think, like, not to get too political or into like modern culture or stuff like that.
Oh no, you're good, man. That's what we do.
But, right. I meant like not to trail off too much, but I almost think it's kind of like how a lot of the time it can be really easy to hear that same message of, well, just work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and buy a house and have kids or something. And then guys my age are kind of left like, okay, yeah, that would be nice. But you do understand it's a lot harder for me to do that than it was for a lot of generations before us. So that's something that I would say like immediately strikes a chord when I look at Hiccup, is that he has these expectations placed on him, expectations that are really difficult for him to live up to. But and this is really cool, most modern movies would take a character like that and they would say he has these expectations and he rejects them and he tries to move away from them. And he doesn't want anything to do with them. But that's not what you see in Hiccup. What you see is, I want to be the guy. I want to live up to this. And I can't, but I'm going to figure out how. And that's just a really cool drive, where it's actually not this message of like, you're not good enough and that's okay. Just be not good enough and be happy about it, which is such a depressing message. Instead, it's this message of, I'm not good enough. I recognize that, and I'm going to be. One way or another, I'm going to be.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Like, he's just really resourceful and really intentional about trying to figure out where he's going and trying to figure out how to get there.
Hey guys, real quick, taking a break from the episode, I wanted to update you on something. So we've got our new merch site up and running. Finally, it's been a labor of love. We've got designs back there for hats, hoodies, t-shirts, all kinds of stuff. We've got a blanket back there so that you can grab the person you most enjoy watching films with. You can cuddle up under the Watch Well blanket. You can watch well together with some popcorn. Head on over to vindicatedproductions.com. Check out the new Watch Well site. Buy some merch. Support the podcast so that we can keep bringing you guys really, really good content to ultimately combat the passive consumption of entertainment and bring a more complete worldview to everybody that enjoys movies. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, now back to the episode. Nick?
Yeah, he's it's almost like the runt in a pack of animals, and it's he can't live up to the standard or the image that literally every other male in his community presents. Like he just, because he can't be bigger, like he can't make himself bigger, he can't make himself stronger. But like what you said, he does still exemplify that drive to be something, to be great. There's a desire for greatness in him, and he believes in himself, and not in like just believe in yourself and everything will be just fine. Not in that type of way. He understands that he has to put effort forward and to move and to grow in a way that then kind of it sets the stage for his ingenuity to take over, right? That opening scene when he actually does shoot down the dragon, it's the result of his ingenuity, right? He does it. He's learning to be a man, but differently than all of the men that he sees, right? He's still learning to exemplify some characteristics of manhood, but it's different than the image that he presents, and he's got to figure all that out as he's going through this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which makes him super relatable. So, Jack, I completely agree. He's like just a really relatable character because every son in the history of the world knows what their dad's shadow feels like.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or another. I mean, obviously, there's people out there that don't have dads or but if you have a dad, one way or another, you know what that feels like. But you are still you're for lack you're in his image, right? Mm-hmm. But you are different. You're still different.
Right.
So you have to. It's sometimes it can be difficult to chart that course to where you're blending both of yourself and not just trying to become something you're not. Your dad or whoever, grandfather, whoever that is. That primary male figure in your life. Mm-hmm. So I completely agree. What's your take on Stoick?
Stoick, I think he's a boomer, and I mean that like half as a compliment and half like he's very in the sense of he's very set in his ways, and he's like, this is what worked for me, and it's what's going to work for you. You just need to be big and strong and kill the dragons. And Hiccup is like, dude, that sounds amazing. I'm not that. I would love to, but I'm not that. And it's almost that it's this disconnect where you constantly see, and it's really cool because the movie. So I don't know if y'all knew this, but they got the cast to record all of the parts together all at once.
I did know that.
And yeah, so
that's pretty cool.
All of the dialogue is like super dynamic. It's not like pre-recorded stuff. Like they're all building off of each other, and it's really subtle, but it really shows up. And I think some of the places where that really shows up, the father-son moments between Hiccup and Stoick are just so awkward because there's that disconnect there where he wants to be a good dad and Hiccup wants to make him like proud of him. He wants to be a good son. But there's just that disconnect. And I think Stoick is kind of that example of someone who really, really, really means well. He really wants to do good by his people. He loves his people. He loves his son. But even when everything points to maybe a different solution, a better solution, he's averse to it. It's new. He's skeptical, stuff like that. It's not something that he's used to. But yeah, I think Stoick is kind of that picture of, and I don't mean to like downplay his character. Like, he really is kind of a picture of masculine virtue. He's a strong leader. He's a very obviously like strong, massive dude. But yeah, it's a really simple character on one hand. Like, he's just the big sort of emotionally distant dad. But on the other hand, like, that's kind of what makes him so complex, is that like how that affects his relationship with his son, essentially. But yeah, I would say that that's basically it. He's a very serious guy, very set in his ways with very high expectations, who does want to be a good dad and does want to do right by his people.
Yeah, he never wavers in his mission. It's really it's all in his name. It could have used like there's a few movies that do similar things with the way that they name characters. Like, I think I've only seen it once, but there was a movie in 2020 called Tenet where the main character is literally called protagonist. Right, that's the character's name. And you could say with this one, Stoick. Like, everything you need to know about that character is in his name, and it's very straightforward. But in a way, it makes it easier to relate to. He doesn't waver. There's not a lot of, the only really time he shows any type of extreme emotion is when he's telling Hiccup that you're not my son. Like, after the huge disappointment and all of that, there's just, everything you need to know is in his name.
Yeah, this will be interesting because I'm gonna in my I guess as we get into more of the scripture stuff, I'm gonna pick on Stoick a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if we collide a little bit in our takeaways of him. But not to give too much away now, I'll say that I see him trying to be a good dad, and he's doing the best he can. But the entire reason he wants to fight the dragons is solely because he's afraid of them. For what they took from him. And he's everything he does is operating in fear. And so you're right. I agree, Jack, that everything he does is he's masculine. He does what's needed of him. He's virtuous in most of the things that he chooses, and he is a decision maker. He's the leader of the town or village, and he embodies everything that a good leader does, outside of the loss of his wife to the dragons. And I guess I'll just leave it there for now.
And that,
if you have something to say, go for it, Jack.
I was going to, in relation to that, and maybe we can talk about this more later, but I remember that, I can't remember it word for word, but the Chesterton quote that's something about like the good soldier doesn't fight because he hates what's in front of him, but because he loves what's behind him. This is almost like a really twisted version of that, where Stoick, he fights because he hates what's in front of him, but only because they took what he loved, that he was trying to keep behind him. He was trying to protect his wife. That was the reason for fighting, but he failed and he took it. And now he's fighting out of that hatred. And now he's fighting because he hates what's in front of him. And I think that's ultimately what, without getting too far down the road, I think that's ultimately what drives Hiccup to have to kind of step around and do what he ultimately knew was the right thing that his father couldn't see, because his father was essentially dead set on, I'm going to kill the dragons because they killed my wife. Yeah,
you're right. I think I guess we could just jump into it now since we're headed that way. But I guess what you're right. I love that you brought up that Chesterton quote. I wouldn't have thought of that, but you're right. They took something from him, and it's almost like they took a piece of his masculinity. So he's overcompensating, but he still has something that he loves behind him that he's fighting for between the town and, you know, Hiccup. You know, he doesn't want he just doesn't want any more loss. And that fear prevents him from seeing his son's side of what they should do going forward. And that fear, you know, you don't know yet, you know, you're too young. It's that you're still, you know, learning, and you haven't seen the dragons the way I've seen them, like what they're capable of, because you don't you have, you know, very few memories of them taking your mother and all of these different things. Right. So, you can absolutely feel where they did. I think they did a good job of character development, because you can feel the weight of that in Stoick's character, and you could see all of his decision making is kind of blooms out of that.
Yeah, I think that's a really big reason why. And so this is technically like in the second movie, but it kind of provides a lot of insight on what was going on with Stoick in the first movie. And basically, so Hiccup is coming to Stoick, and he's basically saying, like, we can work with the dragons. You know, there's a better way. It doesn't have to be the killing. And it turns out, we find out that's exactly what his mother was saying. And he, spoiler alert, she actually didn't die.
Right.
But she got taken away by a dragon, and Stoick thought that she was killed by a dragon while she was trying to tell everybody, hey, these things we can train them, we can live with them, we can work with them, we can be at peace with them. So that definitely that was definitely something he wasn't about to go through again. You know, he's like, I'm not going to lose you too, not the same way. Which almost makes him even more closed off to those ideas that Hiccup's having.
Nick, anything?
No, just keep going. I'm enjoying this. I can just sit here and listen and listen to you guys talk.
Okay, so with that being said, let's talk about how important it is. I want to get your guys' thoughts on how important it is as men. You know, Jack, I can't imagine you have any kids yet, right?
No.
So as
I'm
men,
no.
Yeah, good man.
That'd be an awkward thing.
As men, how important is it, and as specifically Christian men, how important is it to not let fear and you know, those let's just call them negative feelings, fear, greed, lust. How do we get those or how do we become aware of those in terms of blind spots to not let them dictate our decision making? What are your guys' thoughts on that? And I know that's kind of a big one, but that's what we see in Stoick, right? So he's got this fear. His perception is that, you know, these dragons took my wife, and I'm going to kill every single one of them because they're not going to take my kid, and they're not going to hurt my town, and I'm responsible for the town and my son, and I'm not going to let them beat me anymore, take away from me anymore. So that fear. And then while that's happening, he's got his son trying, hey, Dad, why don't we think about this a different way? And he's just completely blocked off to it. Yeah. How do we, whether it's a friend or, you know, a brother in Christ, how do we not let that happen?
When it's in the context of the type of, this is almost going to be a non-answer, but when it's in the context of that type of grief and that type of struggle, sometimes it's not even possible to recognize it in the moment. Sometimes it's like right there in the midst of it, when you're actually going through it, you are so convinced that you're moving in the right direction that I think that's what you see in the movie is just like this. it's not necessarily that he didn't want to listen, it's that he couldn't listen. He was so convinced of his own way that until he has this huge moment where everything he thought was true is proven to be no longer true, like he's just going to keep going. And I think you have to be incredibly aware of your own tendency to trust your own perception of things. And I guess, talking about being a man and a father and all of those various things, having a position of leadership has to come with a level of humility and believing that you don't always know the exact way to move forward. And even when you think you do, you still might not. And that doesn't mean you can never be confident in your decisions, but there's a healthy bit of, okay, I just heard something different than what I was thinking. Maybe I should consider that for at least a second. Maybe I should consider that before moving forward. And especially when it's somebody you love and care about. But that's what initially comes to mind for me when you presented that question.
What do you think, Jack? You got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We have the benefit of the Holy Spirit, right? And Stoick obviously didn't have that. Obviously, like totally different fictional universe, but it is a real thing. We have the Holy Spirit, and so I would say we always need to make it a priority to be in prayer about every decision, especially if there's either, and I would say it goes both ways, whether it's like a wise voice or maybe even a voice of authority over you, like a father saying, hey, this isn't the best idea, or whether it's someone who would be affected by your choice. So like maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your wife, and obviously I'm not saying that your kids can't be wise or your wife can't be wise. Obviously, I hope your wife is wise, right? But
I guess if she's not, it's your fault, right?
Yeah, kind of.
You're bad picker.
Yeah, but basically, you need to listen to the people around you, especially people that are wiser than you, and especially people who are gonna like essentially whatever you decide, it's going to affect them. They're gonna have some kind of perspective on that you might not really get. So if those voices are telling you something different than what you're thinking, be in deep prayer over that, because that could be God working through those people to bring about a change of mind. But besides that, I would say it is a really, really, really hard thing, like to kind of work past our emotions. I know that we're like fans of saying things like, like if you show me the facts, I'll change my mind. If you show me the facts, I'll agree with you or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I really don't think people work like that. So we can't always assume ourselves to be perfectly reasonable, logical men. And we need to always be working to sanctify ourselves. We need to be quick to change our mind when we realize we need to, but at the same time, we can't hesitate. If it's time to act, it's time to act. And whatever path you choose, you have to choose one. You can't just, collide with something because you didn't choose to go one way or another.
Right. You can't be indecisive. Yeah, right. For sure.
So there is that balance there. You can't be too dead set on one decision, but you can't be so back and forth that you end up not making one anyway.
We've all been there. You've been inspired by a new creative idea, but you've got 3 videos in the queue that need to be edited by the deadline. Or deciding to hire a full-time editor can feel like throwing money at the wall after salaries, benefits, and equipment. It could leave you frustrated and be a burden on your content schedule when editing stacks up. We want to help you bridge the gap. It's really simple. Log into your dashboard, sync cloud drives, and send us your raw files. And we'll do the rest. Worried about the final cut? With our 2 unlimited plans, you don't have to worry about revisions. We'll do it until it's right. We keep you in the driver's seat as content creation depicts the creator. Log into your project management dashboard via Notion for direct, instant communication and watch your project reach each phase of editing until completion. You create, and we just do the work. Vindicated Productions, removing the burden from content creation.
Yeah, I want to kind of hone in on something that you said. So you said you like a wise man needs to listen to the something to the effect of listen to those around him. Mm-hmm. And I think I think that's true. And I think in the case of Stoick, I don't remember a specific scene where he had a contrary opinion outside of Hiccup.
Yeah. So
as a leader, we need to go forth exactly what you said, Jack, and we need to make sure that, whether it be, a trusted brother in the faith, or a pastor or an elder, or somebody that would likely have maybe a contrary opinion or a different perspective, so that you could always just re-examine yourself. Because Stoick didn't have that, and then when his son brought it to him, it's oh well, you're my son, you don't understand,
right?
And then that was his downfall, right? That was the downfall,
right?
Do you have something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's why the scriptures say there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that's absolutely true. There is one character like kind of throughout, Gobber, in the movies, and he does actually tend to. I don't know. I don't think Stoick ever goes with what he says, but Gobber always tends to say something, and he's more of like a goofy side character almost. But he always says something that's like half obvious and half like ridiculously insightful, like you would never expect it from him.
Right.
And it just makes like everyone around him kind of like hesitate and go like, wait a minute, like he might have a point there. I don't think that it ever ultimately causes Stoick to change his mind though, but there is that, having like a trusted friend who'd been by him like kind of all his life. And especially I think a personality like Gobber, because you kind of see all the way throughout, whether he agrees or disagrees is almost irrelevant. He's going to ask questions, and he's going to like try to get you to grapple with whatever alternative there might be. And I think that it's always good to have friends like that, have people who are going to
yeah, for sure,
push you. So like, maybe I'm like, I don't know, maybe like struggling to try to figure out something, or defend a position, and my friend who agrees with me is going to like play devil's advocate,
right?
Because that's how iron sharpens iron. But yeah, I think that's definitely true. Stoick didn't really have any sort of system of accountability, and that did ultimately lead to his downfall.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's all I've got on Stoick and my takeaways. I wrote I took some notes here on some, scripture verses. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understand obtains guidance, Proverbs 1:5. And I've got 3 other ones that I'll post probably down in the description if you guys want to, check those out, the viewers. Jack, what was your main takeaway from the movie?
I'm not gonna lie, my main takeaway was like no blackpilling, like no more doing that. Like there's hope. Hope is a Christian virtue. We are obligated to have hope, and you kind of see that throughout the movie. That Hiccup, like even when things like kind of suck, he's always almost playfully, like jokingly pessimistic, like oh great, everything's going wrong, but he never gives up. Like he never gives up. He's always like everything kind of sucks right now, but I'm going to keep working at it. I'm going to keep going. And ultimately, and we didn't talk about this a whole lot, but I think one of the most subtle but profound things about that movie was a side character, basically this girl who's way out of Hiccup's league, that's established at the beginning of the film, Astrid, and he has a huge crush on her. And what ends up kind of, I guess, like winning her over, he kind of stops trying to impress her and actually starts doing something, and that impresses her. Shocker. And ultimately, like, you know, he shows her the dragon, they go on a flight, it's all great. And she said, they find the nest, they find the dragon's nest, and she's like, we have to tell everybody, this is what we've been looking for. And he says no. And I remember this scene really vividly. But she says, so you're really going to, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she says, you're really going to keep this a secret. You're really going to like hide what we've been looking for all our lives to save your pet dragon. And he says, yes. And she just kind of pauses for a second and says, okay, so what do we do? And I think, I don't know. It's like, it's a really, really based move, because it's like on the outside, she kind of seems like the girl boss character, you know, swinging an axe around, but she very quickly submits to the man who has a plan. And I think that's Hiccup's like kind of strong point, because he does the same thing with like the other teenagers around him at the end of the movie, kind of rallies the troops. And that's kind of the through line, is that Hiccup may not know the answer, but he knows what needs to happen, and he knows that he's going to try to figure it out. And I think we all need to have that drive. We all need to have that hope, especially as young men, especially when we're disadvantaged, because that's when it matters most. You know, the glory of young men is our strength. You know, we have to have that fortitude. And we need to be able to, like, even when things kind of suck around us, you know, like just the situation isn't ideal. We need to be able to say, I may not have all the answers right now, but I'm going to take the next right step forward. I'm going to take the next step in the right direction, and I'm just going to keep moving from there. And I'm hoping, and obviously how this translates over to us is, and I'm trusting in God for the final result. I'm trusting in God to bring fruit from what I'm sowing right now, in these small steps of faithful obedience while I wait for this whole plan to like kind of be revealed to me, to what I need to be moving straight toward.
Man, that's good stuff.
Yeah, and
Nick, go ahead.
To like what you said about her name's Astrid, right? That's what
Astrid.
the girl's name is. Yeah. She's instantly attracted to the fact that he has a purpose that is bigger than her, right? Like, and I mean, just basically just restating what you said, but it's just, as soon as she sees that in him, instantly she's willing to follow. He didn't have to coerce her.
Yeah.
He didn't have to make it seem like something that she should be in. Like he didn't have to do any convincing. All he had to do was be genuinely convicted and move forward. And when she saw that, she's like, yes, I'm in. So yeah, that's really cool. To kind of go along with some of what you said about, you know, your takeaways, what I see is a little bit of what Paul says to Timothy. 1 Timothy 4:12, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and conduct, in love and faith and purity. And, you know, Hiccup is young. He's viewed as, his inexperience disqualifies him from making certain decisions. He's weak. He has, you know, he's not viewed as anyone who can overcome and conquer, right? He's got too many limitations, his youth being one of them. And yet his youth is also one of his greatest strengths, because it allows him to think differently than the previous generation. But in addition, he has such respect for the people around him. He has such respect for his father, such respect for his community and what they're trying to do. He just sees something that they don't, so he's setting an example in his convictions. So I feel like that just calls back or calls to what Timothy is saying. And too often, there's kind of two ditches where like the typical boomer mentality, like you said, his Stoick is kind of a boomer, right? Is if you're young, you're stupid. Like you're just dumb. You're automatically dumb to me. You offer no value to the world. It's like I'm a millennial, and we were all lazy. Like we were all lazy, didn't want to work, and all of those things. So that was the picture of millennials, and from the generation before us, and before that as well. But no, being young does not eliminate you from pursuing righteousness, from pursuing good, from having conviction and moving forward in that conviction. And Hiccup's just a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Jack, what's your favorite part of the movie?
Man, I gotta say, the test drive sequence. So you can YouTube that, just How to Train Your Dragon test drive. But so this it's probably one of the best scores that I've ever, out of pretty much any movie that I've ever seen. Maybe Lord of the Rings beats it, but even then, it's really close, because the theme writing is so simple. From the beginning of the movies, from the beginning of the movie, all the themes are established. You have Hiccup, you have Burke, you have Toothless, you have Astrid. All the themes are established in that first opening sequence, and throughout this test drive sequence, it's the first time that Hiccup is flying Toothless, and he's trying to figure out how to work the prosthetic tail,
the pedal, and
because it's a complicated thing, and it requires him to operate it. Toothless can't fly by himself, and it is so cool how they take the two themes, Hiccup and Toothless, and they tie them together, and it's like conflict the whole time, where one is trying to overtake the other, and then there's this crazy part of the scene where Hiccup drops the cheat sheet that has all of the pedal positions on it. He drops the cheat sheet, they start falling. Everything's chaotic. He grabs the cheat sheet again. His theme comes back in, but it's still kind of chaotic. It's still all over the place. And then he finally gives up. He realizes, I need to trust this animal. I need to trust my instincts. And I just need to kind of go with it. And he lets go of the cheat sheet. It flies off in the wind. And at that exact moment, his theme and Toothless's theme kind of come together. And it's this just really incredible moment, musically, cinematically. The animation is amazing. It's probably my favorite animation out of any of the three movies. It's just such an amazing scene, especially in the context of the rest of the movie. It's just so great.
Yeah, is there a this is just off the cuff, so if you guys don't think so, you can say that it's dumb or whatever, but is there, you've got the dragons, and then you've got the Vikings, and the Vikings are trying to kill the dragons, but then you've got this one Viking that gets the dragon to become part of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a parallel, or could we draw anything from that, from our perspective as Christians and evangelism? What do you guys think? So instead of slaying the dragon, maybe, I don't know, like our buddies at the Forge Press, slay the dragon, win the girl, right?
Yeah.
But what if we get the dragon, instead of slaying the dragons, we get them to become part of, our family?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because I know their whole thing is more idols and, the idol of the day. I get all that, but I don't know. You were talking and you were saying that, they had to become kind of this one thing.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a dichotomy between all of Toothless's weaknesses there's probably an argument to be made that they're Hiccup's strengths and vice versa, right? And they're kind of like this perfect little match.
Mm-hmm.
Anything there or no?
Yeah, kind of. So I'm honestly still all for the slay the dragon and get the girl.
Oh yeah,
Which is kind of complicated considering this is like probably like one of my favorite movies. Because the whole point is that you don't kill the dragon. But I would say so. In our world, dragons are bad. That's what we mean. Like slay
right.
the dragons that we're trying to fight, the actually inherently evil things. In their world, the dragons are not inherently evil.
Right.
I think, and so I think like maybe kind of I think the bigger thing is perspective. So Hiccup realized, and this is where I actually had to grapple for a second because I was like, so obviously going against the rest of the town was the right move, but I'm really in favor of like consensus and tradition and stuff like that. So I was like, so how does that work? And then I realized, no, Hiccup was sticking with what everybody was saying, but he was looking under everything because he realizes what we want isn't to fight dragons perpetually. What we want isn't to kill dragons perpetually. What we want is peace. What we want is trying to figure out how to live as ourselves in the best way possible, live as a people. So he figures out a new way to do that where instead of trying to just hack down the dragons and just be in this perpetual war, he instead harnesses them. Now, what you said about the two of them becoming one, I think it's really interesting because I think that's one of Hiccup's very few flaws is that he becomes very, very dependent on the dragon, on Toothless. And you kind of see that, especially throughout the second movie. And you see, without like going into all the plot points, there's a point in the second movie where Toothless is taken away and he kind of has to overcome that. He's like, oh shoot, who am I without this dragon? And then the third movie, that's the whole premise. And that's the third movie. I can't say it's my favorite movie because it's only my favorite because of how the series started. But it concludes it so well because at the very end of the third movie, he has to realize, first of all, I have to let Toothless go. I have to let the dragon go because now he has a girlfriend. So obviously I need to let him go. You know, he needs to have his own life now. But ultimately there's, he lets go because he realizes I was never, this dragon was never part of me. This dragon was never something that made me who I was. And he needed to kind of find his identity independent of Toothless, independent of this power that he harnessed. And I almost think it's like, so this is a really random parallel, but it's like maybe a guy like, you know, decides like, hey, I need to start lifting some weights. He starts going to the gym, and then the gym becomes like kind of his identity. He becomes like a gym bro. Because there is, I'm not going to be like a boomer and be like, oh, you can't turn fitness into an idol or something like that. But like there is an actual danger there, you know, of becoming too obsessed. And then he has to realize like, oh no, my identity isn't dependent on this. It's still a good thing, but I'm not dependent on it. But yeah, I think the bond with Toothless is a really interesting thing. But I think the main lesson that we have to take away from that is that we need to try to, when we're trying to solve a problem, one, we need to figure out how to do it in a way that best maximizes our own abilities, our own talents. And two, we need to figure out what problem we're actually trying to solve, not the one that it might appear at the surface. And yeah, I think that applies to the culture war too, you know?
Of course. Yeah. That's good stuff. Nick, anything?
Yeah, what you just said about, you know, making sure we're solving the real problem and being aware of that and not just what's on the surface. You could even point to the movie for that too, because what's underneath the surface in the dragon lair is a much bigger, truly evil beast, right? Truly evil dragon that is kind of, would you say oppressing the other dragons? I know that's kind of a loaded word nowadays, but you know, is in a sense controlling them and things like that. So there's this other dragon that is truly guiding things underneath the surface. And that is kind of a good example of what is actually going on. But the dynamic between Stoick and Hiccup, Stoick only sees the surface problem. Hiccup finally is able to see the real problem, and then they go about it in two different ways because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the whole goal is to fight so you don't have to fight.
Right. Like that's what we want.
That's
we
it.
Want peace. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Cool, man. Do you guys have anything else to say?
Mm-mm.
No? Well, Jack, you're a real one, man. I appreciate you coming on. It was a lot of fun talking about, I think this is our third technically kid movie? So we did Sing 1, Sing 2.
Super Mario.
So fourth
Super Mario
with
Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, so fourth. So the kid stuff's important, you know, like if you're a parent out there and you want to start, you know, talking worldview and starting that young, dude, movies are the way to do it. You can, that's why we love what we do, is because you can simplify it as much as you need to, you know, you can just make it completely about the basics of the gospel and stuff like that. So you can jump in wherever you are in your spiritual maturity and play the game. So yeah, again, Jack, I really appreciate it. Where can people find your stuff? Just Twitter,
so
X?
people can find me. Right now just Twitter. I recorded the episode already, but I'm releasing I'm starting a podcast and I'm releasing the first episode Friday. I wish I could tell you the name, but I have 3 and I haven't decided between them. So it'll be on Twitter though. I'll post that on Twitter whenever I get it off the ground. And you can just find me there at Reformed Zoomer, Reformed_Zoomer. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. And when you decide the name, send it to me and I'll put it in the description of the video. And then that way people can just go down there if they want to check you out and then click on it. I'll put the link to your X account on there as well. So yeah, again, man, we really appreciate it. Great episode. And we hope to have you back sometime.
Yes,
Maybe
sir.
we can talk about number 2 and number 3
Yes,
more
sir. Cool.
specifically. All right, man. And that's going to be it, guys. We will catch you on the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're going to watch well.